And Swinny, sit back, just relax, take a load off. There's more Analogue update news. So another week, another set of Analogue updates. So the Analogue Pocket itself was updated this week. So the Analogue OS v1.1 beta 2, along with the openFPGA version 1.1. Some of the cool changes that they've actually clarified the whole license situation, which was sort of, rumbling in the community around how, these licenses can match up with some of the stuff that's already happened with Mister. So it's very important that that has been clarified. Ability to change cores in the menu, view longer file names, like some of these like quality of life stuff. Really cool news that they've actually flagged that the original display mode, so they're the really cool, vintage, display mode. So it makes it look like an old school Game Boy or an actual Game Boy Advance, that they're coming to the openFPGA cores soon. So that's really, really cool. I'm looking forward to that. Currently, obviously, given that there's lots of updates, this update has actually broken the Neo-Geo core, but that's getting updated in itself as well to make sure it works again. And then the last one is, I think it's a really good sign so far that with Analogue that they're able to release more consistently. More consistently.
Cough break.
Yeah, cough break.
So I'm on mute coughing so much at the moment. So
am I.
You don't have that luxury.
It's really good to see that they're constantly, updating and engaging with the community a lot more, and they're hitting the schedule that they've put out there. And the big thing for me that I'm looking forward to is supposedly next month they're going to update the Pocket again and add DAC support. So that will mean I'll be able to plug in the Analogue Pocket dock to my Analogue DAC. So, just getting all the way to the end of it, it means that I can plug in the Analogue Pocket and output to my CRT, like the, Sony Trinitron that I have. So I'm really looking forward to playing some of like the old school Game Boy games, Game Boy Advance games on the Trinitron, because I've never actually seen them on there.
Playing Game Boy games on modern TVs is an experience. Like I was playing, I think it was in the Contra collection. I think I was playing one of the Game Boy games there, and it's pretty rough. So I think the idea of using a CRT if you've still got one for this, I think that's a really good idea actually.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing what it's like, because they're not designed for CRTs. Like this is something that I think people get confused, because the original consoles, like, the SNES, Mega Drive, stuff like that, they were made to take advantage of CRT effects, scan lines, all that kind of stuff, and blending. But Game Boy was not. It was always built for LCD. Like, that's what they were always expecting. And you even see it with Game Boy Advance that they went really crazy with the palette, because the Game Boy Advance, when it launched, was so dim. So they had to really, boost up the contrast and saturation and stuff to make it seen. So when you see it on, an Analogue Pocket screen, it's like, holy shit, it's too vibrant. You can kind of tell they've gone a bit crazy with the colors. So yeah, really cool updates to the Analogue OS, the core, functionality of the system. We had new cores announced this week. So from nullobject, Tecmo arcade core, starting with Rygar, and it's already playable. I've played it on my Pocket. It all works. It's really cool. Big news around Jotego. So he's probably the most famous, I'd say, Mr. core developer. So he's a guy who did the whole CPS2 core. So that's Street Fighter Alpha, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, all those kind of really cool games. Starting with the the Renegade arcade core. So it's going out to patrons on Friday, the 2nd of September. He did make some comments in the community. It was kind of interesting. Saying, it's powerful, but it's not quite as powerful as a Mister. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the limit is, what games get on there and what don't.
Yeah, so look, a quick question for someone that is very ignorant of any of this. I know arcade boards are very different than, let's say, video game consoles and everything like that. But is this typically the way? Do they roll these things out as individual games? Or is Rygar, for instance, not using a board that other Tecmo games would use?
What some of these things are is they implement a bunch of the arcade board, right? And some arcade boards are multi-system, so you can have different games. So CPS2 is a good example.
Yeah,
it's like a system. But the thing is, even implementing that, some of the ROMs don't take full advantage of every feature on the board. So they implement a subset of the board such that like a game like Rygar can work, but other games can't quite yet because they haven't fully nailed the entire board.
Is it much set up to, like, if they do roll some of this stuff out as individual games for the arcade, like, is it finicky to do it on an individual basis, or is it a pretty simple process?
No. So when they were initially doing all of this stuff, so for Mister mostly, it's super finicky, like the most insanely finicky thing you ever see. It's like they are literally getting the physical arcade boards and then like taking the individual components apart and like decapping them and like analyzing the circuitry and stuff. It's like insane shit.
Because like I think you really have to want to play the game to do that. You know what I mean? It's not. I know some of this is let's do it because we can, as opposed to let's do it because everyone wants it. But at the same time, like I don't mind Rygar, what I've played of it, but I'm not going to go out of my way to do it. So if the Analogue Pocket is a bit simpler, then that would be good. But yeah.
No, so like the way it's working with this space really is people so far from what I've seen, they're not really looking to make new cores so much as they are looking at just porting existing cores that exist. So with the Neo-Geo one, that's a good example. That was taken from like an existing core, and the person that ported it never did the code for the original one. It was just like, how do I translate this so this works for Analogue Pocket? And it's like, if it took 100 units of effort to create the core in the first place, it probably has taken 1 to 10 units of energy to port it, depending on how hard it is to port, right? So the difficulty with like Neo-Geo to get everything working is it doesn't have enough RAM for some cases. So it depends on the system. I think, what you'll see though is once they do things like the SNES and the NES, once you get those things working, then you've got like thousands of games on those systems, right? But with the arcade one, you're 100% right. It's like with MAME, so this is going back into emulator world, with MAME, you've got like, literally thousands of arcade boards you can play. With Mister, it's not thousands. It's like, dozens or, like I think it's around the dozens mark. So a game like Pac-Man, Galaga, they're all done. But there's like lots of games that haven't been converted into Mister World yet. Like you can't play Street Fighter 3 on Mister. But the best way to play Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo is on the Mister, I would argue. So it's very mixed bag. But once they get like NES and SNES stuff, it's going to be massive. So, and I'm sure that's coming, but it's really positive that Jotego's jumping on it. I'm sure there are people working on the SNES. NES is like super obvious because it's just like a system that, definitely the mysterious developer who released all these other cores that I'll talk about in a second, I'm sure he could translate it quite quickly, but I don't think he will. Like, I don't think he'll be the one doing it. So I'm guessing someone's going to try to port one of the existing Mister cores over to the Analogue Pocket. And just speaking of which, some of the core updates to round some of this out. So that very mysterious, specialized 1997 developer who we don't know anything about has updated their Game Boy, Game Boy Color, SG-1000, Master System, and Game Gear, and I should say Game Boy Advance as well, cores. And it's really awesome and crazy updates for me, at least. So the way it used to work is like you'd go into the core of the game and then you're playing it and you have to quit out of everything. Now there's like an in-game menu. So you can actually, like if you're playing the Game Boy core, for instance, you could switch between like Donkey Kong to Tetris, like in-game. It actually shows you the controls now. You can't map the controls, but it's obvious like that's the first step to then remapping the controls. And for each of the cores, there's specific settings that like is available and some really, really cool. Like stuff like you can have a rumble strength. So there's actually a rumble pack that you can get on some of the games, and it actually works with these cores if you have a rumble pack, like a DS rumble pack. I mean, who's crazy enough to get something like that? So, and then the other big thing for me is that they've separated Game Boy and Game Boy Color cores. So now, like when you boot the Game Boy, it's like literally like an original Game Boy. Like the Nintendo logo comes down and it's like ding. It's, I don't know. There's something very like nostalgic and iconic about it. And then a few other like updates. The Space War PDP 1 core was updated, and then the Pong core was updated. And that's just like that person like coming up with AGG23, coming up with some really cool stuff. And then finally, just on Rumble packs, I was one of those crazy people that was like, oh, I need to get like a Rumble pack for the Analogue Pocket. Unfortunately, I don't have the Pocket on my desk. But I actually bought this this Rumble pack that's like a repo Rumble pack for from an Aussie actually in Queensland, from this Inside Gadgets thing, and I ordered it. Came like, I don't know, like less than a week later, and it's insane, dude. It's like I have this like little cartridge that's like a Game Boy Advance cartridge, and like for games like Pokemon Pinball, it will actually like rumble. And I'm like, this is like the coolest thing, because like I didn't have any games that rumbled on Game Boy, and I never had a Game Boy Color, and on the Game Boy Advance I never had anything that rumbled. I never actually had anything that rumbled until the Switch. So it's just like, it's kind of cool, and it'd be kind of actually insane if people started to hack old ROMs to actually add in rumble. Like that would be such a wild thing to do. So yeah, no, very cool. Like massive updates with analog stuff. It's, as long as people keep updating, I'm gonna start updating as well.
So all these updates, and one last question from me.
Yeah.
Can it support the Game Gear TV tuner yet?
Wait, what do you mean yet? I think it did actually support it. I think you
But don't you need to plug that thing into it though? Like I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, that TV tuner, Matt, remember that? Did you have that?
I think I had it, man. Like I've got, honestly, this is like a good example of like false memory. I'm pretty sure I had it. But
I just love the look of it so much. Like the fact that there's an antenna sticking out of your Game Gear is just, I love it. I never got to try it. Like I was always curious because as a Nintendo kind of fan, you know, back when I was a kid, I was like, man, you can watch TV on the Game Gear. It's just such a cool idea.
I probably have a false memory that I have it. You know, the whole thing, and you've touched a sore spot with me with the Game Gear, that I just kind of hate that thing because of like the fact that I wanted a SNES, honestly, more than I ever wanted anything in my life. Like that's like number one. Number two, Super Mario Brothers 3, and number three, surprisingly maybe to you, is like Ocarina of Time. Like they're the top three things for me that I wanted. Like I just wanted them so bad, right? And then yeah, getting that goddamn Game Boy, I was like so pissed about it.
Game Gear.
I don't know, man. I feel like I did have one of these things because I'm like looking at it.
It wasn't meant to be, hey, let's extend and derail. It was like, hey, I just want to bring up the Game Gear TV tuner.
It was a crazy thing. It was a crazy thing.
That's the whole reason.
I got some crazy memory that I had one, but I'd probably be wrong. I don't know. We wouldn't have been able to afford one, but it doesn't work. So I actually just double checked. So I've actually got a Game Boy camera. The Game Boy camera works with the Analogue Pocket, which is really, really cool. It's crazy, man.
I wonder if there's people out there making like the printer rolls for the Game Boy camera on eBay and stuff.
For the Game Boy printer?
Yeah.
There's
got to be somewhere out there making some. You talked about repro.
I hope so. That'd be good.
Printer stuff.
But yeah, I've just checked. The TV tuner for the Game Gear doesn't work because the technology is quite interesting. It actually uses the LCD technology and specifically that screen to display the image. It's just not a video feed. It's like the way that they process the video.
Come on, spiritualize 1997. Pull your boots up. You got to get the TV tuner working. Poor form.
But also, by the way, there are like no analog TV signals anymore. So you literally can't pick up anything, even in Australia. And
that doesn't matter. I'll look at static all day long.
Static. Yeah, so like shout out to all the devs and everyone working on the Analogue Pocket stuff. I think it's really cool, really amazing, really cool community. Hopefully people can like chill out about the whole Mister versus Analog stuff. I think both can exist in harmony. I'll definitely be picking up a Mister when I finally one day find a candy cab worthy of buying. Because I definitely will get a Mr. Cade then. But yeah, like a very cool update. And I'm like, I don't know. I like being on the journey, but then I think about your situation where one day you'll get this thing, and I almost guarantee it'll be like SNES, NES, Genesis, like everything will be available then. And you're gonna be like, oh, okay, what do I want to play? And
I'll be like, I'll just play Dr. Mario on my cart that I already own. That's all I'll do.
Probably, yeah, probably. All right, let's wrap up the